recognized, as I think you've noticed all week, that we want to give as much information as we possibly can to all of our bankers on how to travel safely now that the vaccine is out and there's this question of how do we transition from virtual touring to actually getting on the road, and will we be safe, and what the experience is going to be like. So we brought together three industry leaders that are related to three of our preferred tour operators. And they're going to share their side of the industry, if you will, in a short presentation from each of them, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So the three panelists that we have representing Aero Stage Line and the motor coach side is Jeff Howes, who is their Chief Operations Officer. And then from Collette, their Executive Vice President, is Jeff Roy, and he'll be addressing the airlines and the airport side of things. And then the president of Mayflower Cruises and Tours, Nish Patel, will be handling the cruise side of things. But since all three of them are also involved in the tour operations, they'll be covering the questions from the tour operator side as well. You get a nice high level here from really very strong industry partners that all facilitate and can pass questions around and so on. So we're going to start off with Jeff Howes. And to remind all of you, Aero Stage Lines is a family business along with Allied Tour and Travel that the Busskohl family owns. They are one of our newest preferred tour operators. Aero owns 250 coaches in 7 states, mostly Midwestern, but also out in Nevada and Arizona. So they are really strictly charter side of that business. So they've got great depth of knowledge of the motor coach side. You have all asked, I think, from the very first rally calls that we had, your first questions were, what's the experience on the motor coach going to be? What's this going to look like? And we got a great presentation today at lunch from Mark, the tour guide who's been on tours already. But now we're going to have a presentation from Jeff Howes. And Jeff, if you would go ahead and take it from here, feel free to share your screen with any PowerPoint or other presentation that you'd like to make.
All right, thank you guys so much. I'm glad to be here and I'm looking forward to talking to you for a little bit. So a little bit about us. Luke, our Chief Executive Officer, wishes he could have been here today. So I want to say hi to all of you guys. He had a family engagement that kept him away, so it fell on me. So when you have been put in charge of reserving ground transportation for your group, a lot goes through your mind. How do you know you're gonna get picked up on time? Or what if the motor coach is late? What if you don't like the driver that gets you? These are things that aren't acceptable and you shouldn't have to worry about it. You deserve a transportation partner that will eliminate that worry and provide you with experience that allows you to relax, enjoy the journey. That's where we come in. We deliver our customers with on-time promise that will help eliminate worries and late pickups. We monitor and track our on-time performance, and we have a performance rating, so we care to find out when we're late. Superior safety is a top priority with Aero. We care about our customers, and our goal is always to have a defect-free product. So moving on from there, that's just a little bit about us, to the stuff you want to hear about. Where we're at today, we're currently running about 30 to 40% of our 2019 revenue during the same period. Bookings are beginning to return slowly. Mainly we're seeing bookings though in collegiate and professional sports markets. Colleges who didn't play a fall schedule are beginning to book for spring, and they're beginning to book makeup games. This has resulted in a drastic uptick in business, and we have seen college book twice the amount of vehicles they normally would, and same thing with professional teams to meet some of the COVID requirements. This has resulted in additional revenue, and we're seeing most of our bookings though between Fridays and Sundays. We've operated a few tours successfully. We have very strict COVID protocols, which I'm going to go into. The tour segment of our business hasn't picked up quite yet, but we're hoping here in the near future, as more people get vaccinated, it's gonna. Oops. So the road back for us has been unpredictable at best. The last 3 months have probably been our most positive period. Business has slowly started picking up and steadily increasing. Our cancellations have slowed and our bookings have outpaced our cancellations, which honestly has been great for us as a business. Vaccinations are really important to the recovery though. Currently, the high risk groups and first responders are being vaccinated. So we're hoping June to August that most of the average citizens will be vaccinated. So we'll get traveling back to normal. We're confident in the fact that majority of the population who wants a vaccine will get one. And as an industry, it will be imperative that the consumer is confident in our COVID mitigation protocols. The confidence will result in more people being willing to travel as the infection rate continues to drop. People will be more likely to begin traveling again. So this is a big part of our business, and we're confident that by September we'll be back to 60% of our revenue, and we're hoping to see a pent-up demand from the group travel side. I mean, that's going to be key for us. So COVID mitigation, safety of our passengers is always our top priority. As customers need to motor coach again, get back on motor coaches again, we have come out with a program called Ready to Ride. So disinfecting the coach and cleaning is imperative. We've developed a cleaning protocol for our cleaners. We're ensuring all common touch points are wiped after every trip. We utilize a chemical called MetaClean. This can be sprayed on any surface. It's a hospital grade disinfectant to disinfect hospital rooms. We wipe down all those surfaces and clean them nightly. During the trip, the driver was provided with BotaniClean. So we had a little concern early on, if we give them a chemical that is toxic or corrosive, what impact does that have on the passengers? So we found a chemical that's 100% organic, but yet listed to kill COVID. That's called BotaniClean. So the driver can wipe it down. He can use it during rest breaks. They use it every time the group doesn't need the driver. He's wiping down the coach and re-sanitizing it. So this is key. So we have a safety of our passengers and we're still able to keep it clean. And then we want to increase customer confidence as part of this, guys. So our big thing was, how do we prove to our customers that the bus is clean? So we utilized our electronic vehicle inspection system. And every time that vehicle is done for the day, it automatically creates a defect in our system that says the vehicle needs sanitation. So this defect gets created, whether the driver's on the road or it's in our yard. The cleaner then has to go in and clean it and then clear this defect, or the driver, if he's on the road, cleans it and clears this defect. This is all digitally timestamped. So if we have a group that says, hey, was our bus clean? Can you show us our bus was cleaned and disinfected? We can. We can give them a printout and show every time the bus came back with a digital timestamp and a signature, and when it was cleaned with a digital timestamp and signature. We know the importance for a lot of groups, though. Decontamination machines are important. So we invested in the Cura system. It's a portable hydrogen peroxide-based machine that sprays hydrogen peroxide fog. It's used to kill and disinfect germs in infectious disease rooms in a hospital. So it'll kill everything up to anthrax. This is done every 30 days or every time someone comes back from a trip that had any type of flu-like symptoms. So this machine gets put in the bus, it gets left in the bus for 3 hours. No one can enter or exit. You have to have a respirator, but it kills everything in the vehicle. So like I said, up to anthrax on a viral scale will not live with this machine. So then PPE was our next biggest part of this. So we got our drivers safety goggles, disposable gloves, and masks. These are just normal items now. The disposable gloves, we have them changed every time they load and unload luggage. In addition, we're taking disinfecting wipes, and every time we grab a bag with a disinfecting wipe and wipe the handle off. That way we know it's getting wiped, one less touch point and one less area, and we're hoping to mitigate that risk for the passengers. Hand sanitizer, it's huge. I mean, it's part of the world now, everyone's looking for it. So we put hand sanitizer dispensers in the front of all our vehicles and in the restroom area of all our vehicles to ensure the passengers have it. Just like the airlines, onboard air quality. So we have standard from all our manufacturers, MERV 5 filters. We can go up to MERV 8 filters with a microguard. We have those in some of our coaches as well. And then air is exchanged every 10 minutes. So complete air exchange inside the vehicle every 10 minutes. The roof vents can be opened and we can cause air exchange at a greater rate if you leave the roof vents open. So that's every 5 minutes. We've implemented a mask mandate for all of our drivers. So they're required to wear them on the trip, when they're around coworkers, when they're around passengers, and anytime they're not alone in the vehicle. So we expect most of these to be normal practices even after the pandemic. I don't see any of these going away anytime soon. So early on during COVID, we looked to figure out how can we leverage technology to reduce risk. So we needed to keep the office staff and the drivers separated because it's just another point where we could pass possibly infectious disease. So we decided paperwork was big. I mean, our drivers to get paid had to fill out a pay sheet, turn in an envelope, turn in a DVIR, and this went to payroll. It was processed and handed to someone else. So this created tons of touch points that we realized early on that we don't need. So we spent 6 months developing a system that utilizes our driver logging system and our dispatch to eliminate all these touch points. So our driver shows up, takes out his personal phone, logs on and says on duty. All his paperwork, itineraries are sent directly to his phone. There's no need to come in the office or create any kind of risk. This has all been 100% automated. So the second challenge we faced was with COVID. How do we ensure all of our policies and procedures are being read, signed, written? I mean, you have to have a mask policy nowadays, a COVID mitigation policy. So again, touch points, guys. We didn't want people coming in, signing paperwork, spending time in the office, having more areas. So we utilized HR software that took this all paperless. Our driver qualification files are paperless. All their annual renewals are paperless. Everything goes directly to their smartphone to reduce the amount of exposure as much as possible for our employees. And the last piece was training. So as we're starting to pick back up, we have to retrain drivers. We can't just put them behind the seat and say, you've been off for 6 months and here you go. So we developed a completely online training program. They do all of their LMSs, all of their online training, all of their policies and procedures remotely. And then they come in and do in-person driving with one person in the building. So they socially distance in the coach. That one evaluator takes them on road training, but we took our training and hiring 100% digital. So we wanted to create the least amount of risk possible. So that's really mostly what I had. I just want to thank Ryan. I mean, with Allied, I know you guys all got some time with him this week to let me present and allowing me to be here. Another brand that we have is Angle. So Angle provides consulting services around the US. So if you need a motor coach in markets that we don't service, we can get it. That's Amanda Medinger. She is our Angle representative. Her contact information is up there. And then I just want to thank you for allowing me to present today. If you have any questions, my contact information is up there, or let me know. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Jeff. Please stick around. I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Yep, no problem.
By the way, if anybody has questions that they'd like us to address, put them in the chat area, and I'll be sure to address those to the correct person. Jeff was talking about this new concept of removing all these touch points that their drivers normally have. And I have to tell you that, I don't know when this was probably a month or two ago now, I got a press release coming from Aero Stage Lines. This is before they were a PTO. How long ago was that, Jeff, that you did this press release? It was probably 60 days, 90 days ago.
Yep, about 90 days ago.
90 days. And I said, why am I getting this press release? And I looked and I said, oh man, these guys are on the ball. I mean, really, what a message was being sent to everybody about safety and cleanliness and all of that going out to the entire travel industry from a motor coach company. So it was very, very well done and quite impressive to read all of the details, which was, Jeff just covered the surface of in that press release. So we're proud to have you guys as part of our preferred tour operator status with Allied and you at Aero. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker. I mentioned his name earlier, Jeff Roy. He's the Executive Vice President for Collette. Among other things, Jeff oversees global air and worldwide operations. So as you know, Collette goes all over the world, and that's a lot of work. Jeff also serves on the USTOA Board of Directors, and I especially want to thank Jeff for his service as a U.S. Air Force veteran. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff will be tackling the questions from the perspective of your guests and group leaders experiencing with the airlines and airports. What will protocols be like? Will a negative test or proof of vaccine be required to pass through airport security and board a plane? When will enough business return to justify airlines adding departures and cities to their flight schedules? All these sorts of things and more, I'm sure, Jeff will be sharing with us. So Jeff, welcome. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate it. And thanks for having us we're thrilled to be a part of your conference here, and we're very excited, very optimistic about the recovery in 2021. Obviously, last year was very challenging. We were excited to restart operations in July. We actually ran a number of domestic tours last year, learned quite a bit, which helps us gear up, I think, for 2021 as we approach spring. And we certainly look forward to the normalization aspect of travel. So, I like to throw this slide up here just sort of in jest, just to say anyone who tells you knows what's going to happen this year with travel restrictions isn't being truthful. This is a change log of travel restriction changes for the last month from one of our visa service providers. And, I kind of I was trying to decide if I was going to put this up here or not, because it could be discouraging, but I put it up here just to explain that, it's obviously a very fluid situation, and, but we have to start to forecast something. Projections are very important. We have to build a business plan around something for both operating existing tours of passengers booked, but also what we should focus our sales and marketing efforts on. North America and Europe is obviously our most important markets. Kind of going back to that crystal ball, there really isn't one. So we have to rely on sources of data. The sources of data we're using as a business, it's our airline contacts, the industry contacts we have at the U.S. Travel Association, the U.S. Tour Operators Association, CATO in Canada and Australia, European tour operators, and then the government engagement teams we engage with through those associations. We combine that intelligence with other available analysis from the financial sector. We think this is really going to come down to, and this may sound obvious now, but a few weeks ago it wasn't so certain. We think it's really going to come down to vaccinations and the idea of this population immunity. We've been working off of a forecast done by Goldman Sachs last December, and now February 11th analysis from Standard & Poor's. First, based on the S&P analysis, the UK should achieve about 70% of its adult population vaccinated by some point in June of 2021. We think that's going to be a critical milestone in getting borders reopened and international travel resuming, both inbound and outbound. Separately, the EU would be expected to achieve this level of vaccination probably by the end of July, but potentially by the beginning of July, should they be able to acquire additional supply, as you've seen in other countries. The US is also projected to achieve that 70% level immunized by June as well. Canada is going to be a little bit slower. It's going to lag the US, EU, and UK, perhaps only 50% of the adult population immunized by July. So a little bit slower there. Certainly they're targeting more towards September, which can have an impact on the reopening in the Canadian market. So ultimately, the arrival of spring and the already declining COVID cases globally, paired with a robust vaccination plan, can begin to lead to that travel reopening. In a recent call with Heather Wingate, she's the SVP of Government Affairs for Delta Airlines, she echoed these sentiments and added that the US, UK, and EU governments, they are working collaboratively on factors that could drive them to lift travel bans. Airlines that have set up pilot programs for international testing have advised that these programs have discovered very few cases of COVID-19, and according to Delta, all were caught pre-departure. So this is intended to demonstrate to government bodies that testing is an effective way to reopen international travel. The U.S. Travel Association, in addition, has developed a 100-day plan for travel recovery, which has the reciprocal resumption of international travel at the core of the plan. They intend to present this to the Biden administration along with major airline CEOs and hotel CEOs sometime this coming March. The consensus is that while in the short run, the new presidential administration would double down on measures to contain the virus, ultimately, this government would reopen travel faster. So given the data we have around vaccines and general direction of the global virus, we've pieced together this forecast you see. We certainly expect that other parts of the world will be slower to open due to vaccine access. Others may have access like Australia and New Zealand, but however, their ability to keep the virus almost completely out of their island nation, they may be much slower to reopen borders even post-vaccination and could be far more selective with whom they open to. So we expect to begin a fairly rapid transition back to full domestic USA operations through second quarter. We do believe that the US will be fairly normal travel environment by this summer. Beyond that, we know our partners in Europe, they understand the value of tourism and how critical it is in driving their economy. 1 in 10 jobs globally, either directly or indirectly tied to travel and tourism. It's an incredible important parts, 10% of GDP globally. We need this in order to have an economic recovery. In 2020, border restrictions amongst the EU countries and with outside countries were relaxed in the middle of June, approaching July timeframe. Given the fact that Greece and Israel have already come to terms on a travel corridor between their two countries for vaccinated travelers, we believe this to be the beginning of a broader travel reopening, perhaps at the sort of travel corridor between country level this year. Given the pace of vaccination and quality of vaccines in the US, even against these variants, we foresee the US traveler being highly coveted by the middle of the year. Again, I think we're ranked 4th or 5th globally right now in terms of per capita vaccination. You know, maybe people didn't want us last year. We think they're going to want us an awful lot this year. So for all those reasons, we expect to see transition to US to EU travel happening towards the end of second quarter, if we're able to stay on track with vaccines. Beyond that, Central America can operate now, could operate as soon as April. Canada's a wild card. We don't necessarily expect any activity there before third quarter. Fourth quarter for South Pacific, possibly pushing towards the middle of fourth quarter, and mid Q3 to Q4 for other destinations in South America, East and South Africa, Middle East, and Asia. So how will all of this work with proof of vaccines or testing to travel? You know, we believe this is really going to be technology driven, led by the airlines, with interoperable standards for these platforms agreed upon by global governments. You've probably read all about the IATA Travel Pass or Common Pass. Ultimately, you know, the goal is for governments to be able to have secure verification of test and vaccine records. Airlines need to be able to provide accurate information to travelers regarding the travel requirements. Laboratories need a secure means to upload certificates regarding passenger travel status, and travelers need a single source to access all of this information. Any of the visa providers you've likely partnered with, any of these companies here on the call, they have all sorts of services to inform you of the rules and regulations around travel to the destinations people intend to travel to. There are organizations that will also provide applications for you to find, you know, PCR, rapid test locations for same day, 24, 72-hour results around you. It is overwhelming for customers, and it is a barrier to travel. There's too many rules and regulations. There's too many places you have to go and things you have to figure out on your own. Ultimately, we're not going to see consumer confidence really recover until we solve for that as an industry. And this is kind of where it's headed. So this is a snapshot. I probably shouldn't share this, but I am going to do it anyway. This is something that one of our airline partners shared with us. A single source platform through their travel app basically aggregates all of the data, travel rules, secure upload for health documentation, a red-green status, just like TSA pre on your boarding pass, so you can travel seamlessly. You know, airlines are 100% dependent on where we're getting to a simplified process in place for customers to travel this year. So they're really leading the way. I'd like to tell you that Collette will be, you know, front and center providing this sort of resources to the customers. I think it'll be more along the lines of our airline partners will be probably the single source resource to make that travel experience simple and accessible for the client. Wouldn't it be nice if all you had to do was, you know, book your trip, and then on the application it tells you, hey, to go to Italy, you've got to either be vaccinated or you have to get a test pre-departure. Here's where you can go to get the test. If you're vaccinated, here's what you have to do to get your doctor's office to upload your records. And then when on your boarding pass, once you've had your test or your doctor's office has uploaded your records, it says green, good to board the flight, red, not okay to board. You know, that's really where this is going. It will happen probably in the next month, 2 months. Okay, so we're making incredible progress. So ultimately, it'll be a combination of health pass, vaccine, rapid antigen, randomized testing, standardized testing, or pool testing to move from accessing country level risk toward isolating individual traveler risk. Kind of like after 9/11, country level restrictions first, eventually move to individual screening. That's where COVID's going as well. It'll be the same kind of transition. So good news. If anybody doesn't know what pool testing is, I'll just throw that out there because I said that. Pool testing is like for family travel. If you think about it, you're traveling with, you know, your wife and 3 kids, you know, instead of testing all 5 of you, you know, one of you gets tested. And the assumption is, hey, that one person is tested negative, therefore the whole family's probably negative and you go on your merry way. This cuts the cost, right? You know, you don't want to pay for 5 tests. You pay for 1 test for your family of 5. You know, so that's the idea. You got to make it economical for people so we can kind of resume our lives here. I wanted to kind of close with this. 2021, we think, will be the tale of 2 halves. I like Jeff's presentation. You know, he talked about September and different months, and I think he's right in part. 21 will be the tale of 2 halves. Normally, this is what we see for booking activity, kind of November to February. So the last 3 months of booking activity as a business, you know, we would see pretty significant booking revenue for the spring months and significant revenue into the fall. For 2021, it looks more like this. You know, first half of the year, first quarter anyway, is gonzo. You know, second quarter, you start to operate a lot more of your North American product, maybe Central America, but the European product that we normally operate in April and May isn't likely to happen. But you do see that inflection point. It's not as if people aren't booking, they really are. People are booking July forward in a pretty big way, and we're still expecting to have, a fall that runs at about 70% of what we ran in 2019. And that's what we're trending for right now. So pretty encouraging. You know, I think the next thing, you know, when you pair that desire to travel with the personal savings rate over the last year in the United States, there is enormous opportunity for a serious travel recovery to take hold. I personally wouldn't delay. I've already booked my summer vacation. I'm looking towards the end of the year for the next trip that we're going to do. There's just an incredible increase in savings. I mean, you could see if you look at March 2019 versus March of 2020, 61% increase in the personal savings rate, 168% for June over June, 97% for September. You get the point. It's just that people have a lot of money saved up. And, you know, I think as the viruses decline globally and people get comfortable and they're vaccinated, you're going to see people exhale and finally decide to put their money on the books and plan that trip. So, and we've seen that play out in the types of bookings we're seeing. We normally do, you know, a big promotion every November, and we saw some pretty stark differences for this last November promotion. And I'm only sharing this because I want you to kind of see what the consumer behavior is like. Oftentimes with these promotions, when we run big discounts, we see the leading passenger tours are the ones where there ends up being a very low price point, the 1 week in Ireland for $9.99 kind of product. For this promotion that we ran, we saw, I think, the combination of factors play out. This is the list of top selling tours we saw in passenger volume order, not revenue order. You know, people have been locked up and they want to get away. They recognize they've missed out on a year or more of their traveling life. So these bucket list, trip of a lifetime type destinations have become a more urgent priority. People lost a year of travel. They've accumulated savings as a buoyant stock market. Many of our clients are retired, so they're watching their retirement portfolios grow, and they've been receiving massive government stimulus checks. I mean, you had millionaire retirees getting $2,000 checks in the mail last year, and they're going to get it again in another couple of weeks. So, you know, these customers took the opportunity to book high-end, long-haul, long-duration, high-price point trips this time around. You know, Alpine Explorer with Oberammergau for 2022, you're talking about something that was minimum 18 months away, and the most expensive trip we sell to Oberammergau, $7,000 a person landing there. You know, complete South Pacific, that's a 27-day itinerary to Australia, New Zealand. It is the most expensive tour we sell. It's $20,000 a couple. This Australia, New Zealand Uncovered, to have these tours, 2 of them in the top 10 in passenger bookings, very, very unusual. Overall for the promotion, you know, we saw a 21% increase versus the 2019 promotion in per passenger spend. So look, with that, it's been a very hard year for the industry, I think. On many levels, personally and professionally for everybody in the country and globally. But we have an opportunity here to blow it out of the water, I think, as the vaccines pick up, border restrictions are lifted, and people really begin to spend all the excess discretionary income they've saved. There really is a tremendous opportunity for the second half of 2021. So we're excited about it. So with that, Ted, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, that's a lot to absorb. I think that between the material and the rapidness in which it was delivered, we've stunned our audience. We actually do have one question that came through the chat room for you, Jeff, which is, what impact, if any, do you as PTOs think Brexit will have on European travel in 21 and 22?
I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on outbound for the United States. I mean, there's other issues, obviously, for, UK-based businesses and UK-based individuals that have to comply with all the border restrictions and taxation issues. But for us, we don't see it as much of a challenge.
Right. You had quickly passed over two things that you assumed that everybody knew about, that I think that might be good to have you explain: the Common Pass and the IATA Pass.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, yeah, what we were, more or less what's going to have to happen here as travel reopens, there's going to have to be technology platforms where people, they can get their tests in the test results can go into the app that allows them to enter the airport and get on the flight. So there's airlines today, if you fly to destinations that require tests, Delta, United, American, they're all doing this. In some cases, they'll actually ship a test to your house, and you'll do a saliva test and mail it back. So you get a result, inside of that 72 hours before your flight window. Once the test result is positive or negative, hopefully, right, you'll get the green light on your app, and it'll allow you to, kind of go on to the next phase of your trip. So the IATA Travel Pass and the Common Pass are just two technology platforms that are being developed for different mobile devices, whether it's iPhone or Android and so forth. And what I was talking to is, what we're expecting is these G7 countries ultimately to agree to standardized interoperable platforms that they'll accept. There might be a dozen apps, there could be 20 apps. All the airlines may have their own form of Common Pass, if you will, that's universally accepted by these governments. It just allows people to get their important data securely onto their device so that they can travel freely. That's really what it's about.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on to our next panelist, and then we'll open it up for question and answer and bring us back to our homeroom, if you will. So our final panelist is Nish Patel. Nish is the president of Mayflower Cruises and Tours. He began at Mayflower as its chief information officer, which happens to be a great background when solving problems and finding solutions and opportunities that Mayflower needs to navigate their partnerships in airlines, cruise, and all operations. For us today, Nish will be covering the question from the perspective of the cruise industry. Cruises obviously are a critical part of the package travel product that you all club directors are selling. And they've been hit with a lot of bad public relations since the outbreak of COVID, and it's been a real challenge for the cruise industry. He'll be addressing the questions of when both large and small ship cruising might return to pre-COVID activity, what sort of sanitizing protocols will take place, when space is at a premium on all decks, how will shore excursions and local guides share their stories and narratives in a safe manner, and things like that. So Nish, we're going to turn it over to you, and feel free to share your screen.
Thank you, Ted. Again, I wish my crystal ball is hazy at best right now, so I wish I could give you a date when the cruise industry will be pre-COVID basis, but I can tell you they're all moving in the right direction of getting there soon. And before I share my screen, I just wanted to give a little introduction or a background about us. Mayflower Cruises and Tours has been in business since 1979. 43 years in the making. We are currently owned 100% by the Scenic Group. Again, a family-owned company. It's owned by the family of Glenn and his wife Karen. That's about the whole family that owns it. We have offices in 7 different countries, which actually they sell to those countries, and 24 ships owns and operated, and building more as we speak. So that is a little background that we have. Mayflower operates independently, even though it is part of, even though it's part of the Scenic, we are owned by them, but we get to operate ourselves independently. So Ted had asked me to talk about the cruise industry, and I can talk more about the river cruise industry because that's out of the 24 ships, I think 22 of them or 23 of them are river ships. There's one ocean ship that is sailing Eclipse, and another one coming up, Azura, later in the year. So safety is the utmost important. whether it's cruising or it's touring, and I'll start with, it begins from the time you get your documents. In your documents, you're going to get a pre-departure medical health evaluation form, which is very standard with all operators. They send you a little form that kind of just have to check box and say, yes, I don't have some of these symptoms, as they say, and before you get on the ship. The other thing is we also are sending this package with all our documents. It's a travel kit that includes some antiseptic hand wipes, a pair of gloves, headrests, face masks, etc. This is just for you to take with you. So in case you don't have something on the plane or before you get to the ship, you have something. On the ship, you'll get another supply as you get on board. One of the things we wanted to do was to kind of make sure, as we all know, a coach arrives to the ship. What happens? About 35 people roll out and rush to the registration desk, line up. And what we have planned for is we're going to do a phased disembarkation, or getting off the bus, and embarkation on the ship. So it's like 6 or 10 people at a time. They can do a safe distancing and continue on. We're also going to have a medical experts that will test you for COVID-19 as you get on. So in case something happened between the time you left and by the time you get to the ship, at least it'll be caught. Goal is, again, to make sure that we do this rapid testing going forward. The team on the ship, we are one of the few cruise lines that the ship's crew they are employees of Scenic. They're not contracted, they are actually employees. So when we looked at the last count for the Scenic group, it had about 2,200 employees. That includes all the crew on the ship. So it's our goal to make sure that every one of those crew member, can speak English and understand English, because that is the primary requirement, because we sell to English-speaking countries. They're also trained because the expectation of the delivery of the service is very high, and they're trained well to make sure that everything is done right. Provide smaller groups when you're doing shore excursions. Again, this is all part of, we may not be the only one, other companies are doing it also, and as we go along and as we move social distancing, the way you can do it is by small groups. You can't put 40 people in a coach and social distance. That's not going to happen. And health and safety protocols follow throughout the cruise. So every day there will be a temperature taking that will happen. People do have to wear masks because that's a mandate, and make sure that everything is done correctly. Healthy crew. The crew stays on the ship for anywhere from 6 to 8 months, and we have to make sure that they're healthy. So they'll be regularly tested for COVID-19, daily temperature checks, health checks, just like we do it with our travelers. The crew will also undergo those every day of the stay on it. Again, trying, as you heard from Jeff from Aero, trying to make things as contact-free as possible. When you're checking in, first you do a phased embarkation, so 6 or 8 people board the ship, and then another 6 or 8 people, and so on and so forth. But also make sure that the check-in is contact-free. Many of the hotels have it where you can just use your phone and check in. Same thing here. Our Scenic ships usually don't even ask for a credit card. They can just walk right in because it's all-inclusive. On the Emerald, they may have a way of getting your credit card differently, because you do have to put a credit card for any optional stuff that you do. Screenings and briefings daily. Again, it's so hard for everybody to remember all kinds of protocols that you're going in, especially when you're doing a river cruise. You're passing through multiple countries, multiple cities, and every one of these cities and ports have different protocols. Something that may be valid in Austria may not be valid in Germany, may not be valid in Czech Republic. So making sure that we have somebody on board that kind of tells you ahead of time, okay, we are going to arrive in Budapest tomorrow, and here's a local protocol. So you don't have to remember. Our client base is a senior. They don't want too much information coming to you all at once on time. So it's basically making sure we tell them first, we tell them again, and we tell them again before we get off the ship. making sure that if there's any questions about safety protocols, oh, how come that one is not there? How come, who's wiping this off? And who's, basically answering those questions on a daily basis as part of the daily briefing. The cleaning, enhanced cleaning commitment. I mean, there's so many common areas where people go, go to the lobby, go to the lounge, go into the bar, go into the swimming pool. These are common areas. If there's 120 people on the ship, they're all going there in one way or another, and making sure that those areas are cleaned more frequently than normal. So that is one of the things that they're going to be doing. Additional care and attention to be paid in high contact zones, just as I said. Cleaning your cabins, more frequently than we have. Socially aware dining. I mean, somebody had asked me, so what happens in most river ships? The dinner is always served at your table, breakfast and lunch is always a buffet style. So with social distancing, how are you doing the buffet style? Again, the answer is what they're doing is they're doing a served buffet where, we'll have small groups of people going to the tables. They'll be served by somebody so they don't have to touch anything and kind of circulate that way. Again, contact-free movement. I mean, when you're going from your cabin to the lounge, there may be 3 different sets of doors that you have to touch. And we want to make sure that every time you go from one area to another, if there's a door, that there's either it automatically opens as you arrive or it's left open so you don't have to touch them. Again, trying to reduce as many touch points, because there's about 130 to 150, 160 people on the ship. Sanitizers, so again, sanitizers to make sure they're touch-free. They're already there everywhere, even before the COVID thing happened, and now they're going to make sure that it is, again, available every place else. Air circulation, I mean, this is something that when Glenn Maroney, our owner, built these ships, he made sure that this was there. Every cabin has this independent air circulation system with the highest rated, filter systems in there. So what happens is when you're in the cabin, the air that is circulated in there comes from outside, circulates inside and goes outside. It doesn't push it back into the lounge area or in the corridors. It actually keeps the air fresh and just to that cabin only. Again, as you heard from Jeff Romero, he mentioned that they have coaches that recirculates the air every so many minutes. Again, you have your own little circulation for each cabin, so there is no contamination going from one end to another. Again, while on the shore, we're gonna be doing the same thing, smaller groups. So digital headsets, so you don't have to, be near each other. You can be far apart and still listen. In fact, the digital headset is something that we have implemented across the board. So even our domestic programs, tours in the US, we provide digital headsets. So you don't have to all crowd near the tour guide to listen to what he's saying or she's saying. You can be far away and still listen to everything else. Some of the headsets are improvised, so it also acts as GPS. If you wanted to take a tour on your own, you can still do so. So there's a lot of technology in some of the scenic and the emerald ships in here. The local partners we work with, which is like, the coach company that comes to transfer you, the tour guides that come on board, the drivers that come on board, they've all been working for the scenic product for a long time, and they have a good relationship. They provide a high level of service and intensive training because we want them to make sure that they adhere to the guidelines that we have on the ship also when they get off the ship. So again, when it comes to cleaning the coaches, hand sanitizers, all of that stuff that you heard, it's all going to be in there. And any supplier staff that gets on the ship, that is not a traveler or a crew, has to go through a screening process. So the tour guides that come on board has to be screened. The supplies, the guys who brings in the wine or the guys who bring in the food, they all have to be screened. So nothing comes into the ship that is not screened. Transport vehicles will be equipped with hand sanitizers, as I mentioned before. Deep cleaning after every journey, and social distancing, again, making sure that we are not packing the coach, we're keeping it enough. So maybe 50%, 60% of the coach is filled. So that is about more or less about the safety and the protocols that we have currently for the river ships. Now keep in mind, these are protocols as of today. These change on a regular basis. And especially when you have a ship that goes through 4 or 5 different countries, the protocols change even quicker. So this is a working document. It's today. It could add more. It could take something away. You know, who knows, by July or August, as you heard from Jeff Roy, you know, things may be opening up. I mean, I heard yesterday or the day before, UK announced a plan. They're planning to open up UK by June. You know, they're opening up sporting venues, et cetera, et cetera. So things may change. Some of this may be relaxed. Maybe some new stuff may come in, but this is what we have as of today. Again, as I would say, trend, I think Jeff was right on the spot. Trending is very high. I mean, I can tell you 21, we had a very decent year, and then April, you know, some of May, the cruises have been suspended because Europe is not ready. So it's kind of dwindling down, and we are anticipating that by end of June, Europe should be back up. And our second half of the year, the ships will be sailing. But 22 is very, very high. I mean, right now we're running about 140% over 2019. This is going to be our busiest year in our history so far. Very high demand for cruises and tours. What does that do? And supply is less, I mean, resulting in higher prices. So it's not too late. If you haven't booked your group for 22, get the lower price and the higher promotions, do it now. Scenic, the group is launching 2 new ships in 21. The Azura, which is a 100-passenger ocean-going ship that is being launched end of December. And Luna, which is on the Rivers Cruises, is launching sometime in end of April, early May. So things are continuing on. You know, we are actually in the process of, we laid the keel for Eclipse 2 because it's been so successful. In fact, we are taking one of the ships to do sailing in the South Pacific. So I'll be sailing, you know, to Japan and Australia and all those places pretty soon. So exciting things happening. As you heard, you know, the travel industry needs all your help. You know, we have been dormant for over a year in surviving, and any help that we can get from you guys to add your people and have them travel is great. I can tell you there are countries that are open. I mean, I got my COVID shot, you know, earlier this month, and guess what I'm doing? I'm getting on a plane in April going to Panama because it's open. You know, just have to, I don't even have to get a pre-COVID test because I have the vaccine. I just show them the document, I get on. It is happening. You know, countries will open up. Africa is opening up. I mean, I just had a call with my operator in Africa. They are accepting people. It's just, all you have to do is get a negative PCR test and you're in. If you have a vaccination done, that's even better. So things are opening up. If you're going someplace, this is the time to book. And thank you all for listening. It's been great. I'm open for any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Nish. And if you'll stop sharing your screen, we'll go back to the
Sure.
general room. There's again, all 3 presenters have given us an awful lot to be considering and to understand. And from your comments in the chat, it sounds like everybody's very appreciative of what you've been sharing with us. So thank all 3 of you very much for your time. One of the things you'll have noticed, it's quite obvious, but I think it needs stating, which is as preferred tour operators, our job is to provide tours going to all sorts of destinations in all sorts of ways. But in all cases, we're dependent on equipment. We're either dependent on the motor coach, we're dependent on the airline, we're dependent on the cruise ship, we're dependent on the hotel, that they're going to do a good job. And here you've seen 3 of those providers telling you how seriously they take this job. Each of them told you that the most important thing is the safety of your customers and of you. So that should be very reassuring, I think, to everybody to know that these examples are just examples. The industry wide, they are all doing this. Hotels are doing their very best. All cruise ships are doing their very best, motor coach companies and so on. But what you also learn from these three is that this is a moving target. It is constantly changing. But what you've also seen is that they are in touch. They are going to know when it's changing. They're going to let you know when it's changing, so that by the time your group goes, you'll have everything that you need to reassure your customers about what is going to take place on that particular trip. Just more reinforcement of being sure to use the right tour operators, in this case, our preferred tour operators, of course, and to be assured that they're going to take very good care of you out there. The other big message that you heard, and I'd like to get some feedback from all three of our panelists on this, is the projections. The projections are very good. You're looking great for 2022 and beyond. The question general question I have is, do you feel that our bank club directors would be well advised to be booking early in order to not be hit with those high prices that might be coming later on when demand has gotten so high? And if you could expand on that a little bit, that would be great. And Jeff Howes, why don't we start with you, because I want to ask specifically, you had talked about your revenues increasing because of the groups needing multiple motor coaches, whereas before they just needed one, now they need two. How are you handling helping them in that situation where suddenly their costs are going way up? Does it matter to you, or are you impacted by when our banks are booking with you?
I think right now booking sooner is probably better. We are seeing quite a bit of demand with multiple motor coaches. We've installed plastic barriers in some coaches. It basically blocks off the seats between the passengers. This is to allow if someone wants to put more people on a coach. But what we're seeing is a lot of the groups want a social distance, so you're only loading to about 50% capacity. So it's really causing demand to go up on, especially peak times. Like we're seeing Fridays through Sundays, the demand exceeding our supply at times. We're fortunate, we have our angle division, so we work with them and we find partners that work with us to make sure the customers are satisfied. But definitely booking early is better. We can always cancel. We're not charging any cancellation fees to anyone right now. So I think booking early is definitely key.
Thanks, Jeff. How about you at Collette? Jeff?
Yeah, I'd have to agree for a number of reasons. One, and I still, I would be thinking about 2021 travel still, particularly for the fall, second half of the year, as I had showed before. 2022 is doing very, very well. There's a few things at play, particularly Europe. Currency is not as favorable now as it was a year ago. So, we're very advanced, so right now we're putting our pricing in the market for 2022, 2023. That currency buy for 2022 forward is not where it was for 2021. So you're still able to buy at a pretty attractive dollar to euro conversion. Vendors are a little bit more desperate in the short run, if you will, even hotel vendors and destination. So the pricing, the offers, the things to get people moving are going to be better for the second half of this year, probably into the beginning of next year. If you book now, even from an airline standpoint, while there aren't a lot of flights and a lot of capacity in the market, there's lots of open seats still. So I think today you can get a good price. I think when you start to look out too far, if you wait too long, I think you could start to see prices go up, particularly on the airline side. They've been bleeding for a year now, badly. I don't know if they're going to throw a lot more seats in the market as routes open up. They'll definitely put those direct flights back on key markets, but they may be a lot more interested in getting yield before they add capacity to get revenue. And eventually that's gonna filter through to package pricing. So I would say, yes, book early, book now. The best prices you're gonna get are going to be now or in the first half of this year for sure.
And to be clear, you're saying that's booking early, not just for 2021, but even for 2022.
100%.
Prices that you've got out there now.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Nish, how about on the cruise side?
Yeah, I guess as I mentioned before, the last one I looked at the scenic data, I think 58% of the cruise cabins are sold out for 22. So I mean that's a big chunk that is being sold out. I mean, even when you call us, I mean, it's easy to find a couple of cabins here and a couple of cabins there, but as a group, you want 20 cabins or 30 cabins. And you want a lot of those on the middle deck. Vista deck is the most popular. Well, if you wait too long, one of the two things are going to happen. The promotion, like currently we have free air promotion on all our river cruises. That promotion may not be there. And secondly, even if I have space, you may not get the Vista cabin that you wanted. You may have to pay up and go at the Horizon deck or the other deck. So I think there's benefits for booking early. I can tell you, 22 is going to be, as our owner has forecasted, is going to be a great year because 2020, the pent up demand from 2020, and even 2021. I mean, yes, we are right. Domestic travel in 21 is going to do very well. I mean, second half of our programs are looking fantastic because we do a lot of domestic tours, just like Collette does. International, they're all going to, who have been rated for last year and this year, they're all going after 22. So the longer you wait to make commitments, you're going to get a deal, but it's not going to be the best deal. I mean, every day I get calls from my sales team. Okay, this group is now starting to promote and they don't have any Vista cabin. Okay, well, there's other cabins in there, but Vista is gone. All the free air is expiring end of March. Can you extend it? I mean, I'm just saying we are getting those calls and promotions are going away and there'll be less promotion. So if you're still thinking about 22, if you haven't done it, this is the time. Lock in your rates, lock in your promotions. That's something we do with our groups.
Thank you, Nish. And I don't ask them to expand on that in order to give you some sort of veiled threat that if you don't book now, things are going to get bad later on. I mention this because all of you as bankers have shared with us that you have different levels of ability to book. Some of you can't book now for 2022. Some of you can. And for those that have the ability to book, it's a good time to be looking and not say, this is still a good time to wait. I'm not ready, I'm going to wait. If you have permission, go ahead and use that permission. For those of you who don't have permission, this may be helpful to you to go to senior management and say, this is really a right time. We can always cancel if we have to. We're going to get our refunds, but if we wait too long, things might be changing. Availability might be changing. Prices therefore will change and so on. So if it sounded a little bit like we're putting pressure on you, we didn't mean to do that. Really just wanted you to know that this is an opportunity and please look at it seriously that way. I also want to give a special shout out before we finish here. I noticed that Catherine Prather has joined us from NTA. She was our keynote speaker on Wednesday. And Catherine, we're delighted to have you. Of course, these gentlemen are also members of the National Tour Association and respected board member in one case as well. So thank you again for joining us, Catherine. I want to open it up for questions. We won't have a lot of time because we have a sponsor here coming up, but let me just see if there's anything in here besides all of your very nice comments about our speakers. Let's see.
I haven't seen any other questions.
Yeah, it looks like it's just all very positive thank yous for being here. Before we let these gentlemen go, are there any other, we want to say anything, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Ted, I have a question.
Amber.
Curious, one of you talked about, I think it was Jeff, who talked about the airlines within a month actually expecting maybe testing to be done, things to be on your iPhone, proof of vaccination, that type of thing. I leave in less than a month on a flight. And is that something that people could be grandfathered in because it's such late, late in the game? I mean, many people are getting the vaccines, but I have not said you have to have a vaccine. And of course, this is a domestic trip to Charleston, Savannah. So I'm just curious to know, in that month's time, I'm traveling, I'm taking a group of almost 40 people. And I'm curious to know, people have said, do I have to have the vaccine? Do I have to have proof? Do I need to retain? They're saying, here's my proof, we get it, keep it. And I've been saying we don't need that yet. And I'm just curious to know what it looks like in a month to be taking a group.
Yeah, so I was speaking less about what the actual requirement was for travel and more about the platforms by which we'll be able to be compliant. So I think you said you're coming from
okay.
Hawaii. Did you say you're coming from Hawaii?
No, from Iowa.
Oh, from Iowa. Oh, and you're going to Georgia?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you'll be good. I don't think you need
Okay,
anything.
so is the platform you're talking within a month, not necessarily that
Correct.
that's what's going to be what you have to do in order to board a plane?
Yeah, so it's different everywhere you go. Every state right now has either no regulations or some regulations for testing. Like I live in Rhode Island, and frankly, if I wanted to go stay overnight in Massachusetts, I'm supposed to do a COVID test. I could throw a rock, to Massachusetts. So, but keep an eye out. Like internationally, I think April 12th is when the UK government is supposed to present their plan for restoring international travel. I think that's when we're going to start to see rules around testing and so forth. If you want to go to Costa Rica right now, you can freely enter the country, but when you come home, you've got to present a negative COVID test to come back to the US, so you don't have to quarantine. It's all very country specific and not standardized right now.
Okay.
Amber, just so to answer your question also, is at this time, Mayflower is not requesting that the vaccine is to be mandated, or you need to show me proof that you have any of that. No, I mean, we're not at a position where we can mandate these things. 6 months from today, if it's all available and everything is available, things could change. But right now, we're good to go. And most places, whether it's Costa Rica, Panama, or if you're coming back into the U.S., you have to provide a negative, test, PCR test. Even from Costa Rica. But what the nice thing about it is Costa Rica, Mexico, Panama, all of those, because they depend on the tourism, they have actually stationed the testing at the resort that you stay at. So before getting on a plane, you get rapid tested, you get the certificate, and you can get on a plane right away because they want that business. I mean, there's an ASTA group that is out in Cabo, and they are doing the same thing. So again, this is the time to go. It's like Jeff said, airline tickets are at a good price right now. So if you have somebody who wants to go now, do it now.
Sure.
Less crowds.
Oh, that's very true. I guess, it just concerns me that all of a sudden, we're at that moment of one of the first people going out, and 2 weeks into it, are we going to be in a tailspin of, oh gosh, now the things have changed. There's got to be that point that the airlines are going to expect it, but us as group travelers aren't going to be able to expect that of our group to have a vaccine. And do we feel that that's going to be a cut and dry, yes, you can go, or no, you can't go? No. You see where I'm saying?
Yeah, and to answer your question, until the vaccine is available, like the flu shot, the airlines are not going to mandate it, because how are you going to get on a plane? There's so much business traffic still going on, and if you're under 65, you can't even get a vaccine. So. Right. You can't mandate something that is not available freely. So I don't see this changing, at least not for the next 2 to 3 months, at least for that much. And it could be longer because, it all depends upon how soon we can get vaccine available to the average person who wants it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nish. I'm going to have to cut this off. I hope any other questions you have, you can bring up in the happy hour time. But Jeff Roy and Jeff Howes and Nish, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's greatly appreciated. And everybody's clapping and their mute buttons are on.
Thank you.
So we really greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Tina, I believe that we have a sponsor from Nova Scotia this evening.
Yes, we do. But first, I want to tell everybody that I have added some resources to the conference homepage. The speaker from this morning sent me her presentation, and that is now under the helpful resources section of the conference homepage, as well as Catherine Prather's presentation from yesterday. So Also, check your updates every day to find out if there's any new information that I need to pass along to you. Those are the two things that I've added now. So I want to welcome Megan Lloyd from Tourism Nova Scotia. Thank you for your sponsorship of this happy hour today. And I'm just going to turn it right over to you. I know you have a short presentation for us. So after she's done, I would like to invite you all to feel free to grab a beverage, a pre-dinner snack, and spend the rest of the hour mingling with our other delegates. And so Megan, please take it from here.
Thank you, Tina. I know that this has been a long week. We've had lots of talking and presentations over the last 2 days, so I promise this is going to be short and sweet, like Tina said. But I do have a Canadian request, especially after that presentation. So for the last 2 days, everyone's been asking me, how are we going to get the US-Canada border open? And I feel like the key is that mass vaccination, but we have a little shortage up here because our prime minister is just too polite. He just should have been more aggressive to get to a larger supply of vaccinations. So if you guys have any extra, send them up north. And as soon as we have more vaccinations, then we can open the border and then everyone can come and visit. So that's my segue from that very important conversation, which I was looking forward to and really appreciate, because we're all kind of wondering, when can we travel? And we don't know up north either, but we're just trying to get vaccinated as quick as possible so your programs can get up here. But I've had a wonderful week. Thank you so much. I am going to just share my screen. I have a couple short videos, nothing too heavy. I'm going to talk about our history of hospitality. And so I'm sharing my screen now. I'll hit those two buttons you told me about, Tina, so you can hear it as well. And then if you can just let me know, can you see my screen?
Not yet. It says you're sharing, but it's not there. Okay.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
It's coming? Okay,
Not
good.
there
I'll
yet,
show
though.
our first video, and then I just have a few slides. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is our history of hospitality. So dating back to the 1600s, we have literally been partying to survive the winter. I am not kidding. It's not an exaggeration. So in 1606, this is when Samuel de Champlain brought over the first settlers from France. And those first 2 winters that they came to Nova Scotia were very dismal, and many people died.